democracy has certain rules of interpretation for the proper understanding of all its legal and illegal instruments. These basic rules are established according to the nation's understanding of democracy. Perhaps they are simple, common rules such that you, my reader, and I can understand and apply, without having to study the law. As our Constitution holds that every American citizen has a right to form an opinion and propagate that opinion and to utilize all honorable means to make his opinion the prevailing one. Without this basic right, the liberty of an American citizen would be as insecure as that of a prisoner. Now take the Constitution according to its plain reading, and I defy the presentation of the Anti-Human Rights Clause in the FTCA, which authorizes plaintiffs to obtain justice from the government for the torts of its officials, thus to the sovereign immunity, a legal doctrine that prohibits minority citizens from having a sovereign state into court without the blessing of the Republicans and the Democrats who are responsible for making and passing the law. A law that was created fear by the undercover agents. Same members of Congress who authored the Patriot Act 2001 have proposed legislation to modify the FTCA in various respects, such as by broadening the circumstances in which a plaintiff may hold the United States liable for torts committed by authorities. Thus to the Supreme Court dockets 11-768, the Patriot Act, which only violated the rights of the minorities. American democracy had become a boy who had no home. His parents are dead and his country would not care for him due to his pigment and religion. In order to survive, he made a bower of branches for an abiding place and hunted for food. He had no clothing, and that showed him as being very ragged and dirty. When privileged members of democracy passed by holding their noses, he noted the jealousies from the good-looking faces and decided to go away from his tormentors and become a great hunter. One night he found a canoe. He had never seen this canoe before, so he jumped in it. Stepping in, he grasped the paddle and pushed. Suddenly, the canoe shot into the air and he paddled above the clouds and under the moon. For a long time he went eastward, and soon the canoe dropped into a river, and then the boy paddled for the shore. On this side of the river there was a great cliff that had a colorful face which looked like a man. It was at the fork of the river where this cliff stood. The boy decided to make his home on the top of the cliff, so he climbed it and built a cabin. The first night there was a full moon, and while he sat on the edge of the cliff he heard a voice saying, "Give me some water." Looking around, the boy, seeing no one, replied, "Why should I give you water?" There was no answer, and the boy began to fix his arrows for the next morning hunt. After a while the voice spoke again, "Give me some water," and the boy took some water and threw it over the cliff. The voice said, "Now I'll tell you a story." Feeling happy awaited, the boy listened to a story that seemed to come directly out from trees on the cliff. Finally the voice paused because the story had ended. Then it spoke again, saying, "It shall be the custom hereafter to present me with a small gift for my stories." So the boy gave the trees more water for another story. The next morning the boy hunted and caught a great number of fishes and birds for food. He made soup and smoked the fish. The smell of the smoked fish went far into the valley, and an old man who was hungry followed the smell and came to the boy for food. First the boy was scared of the old man who wore a white yarmulke, white hat, but then realized that the old man was hungry and wanted to eat, so the boy offered him 7 small smoked fishes and a bowl of soup. The old man said to the boy, "I have nothing to offer you but my blessing with my yarmulke, white hat, and a rosary to remember me." The old man left the cliff after eating the food. The boy puts the yarmulke, white hat, on his head and puts the rosary around his neck to look cool. Suddenly the voice came from the cliff, "Where is my sadaka, gift?" So the boy threw a few bowls of water toward the direction from where the voice was coming. Perhaps the voice started and said, "Hereafter when I speak announcing that I shall tell a story, you must use the rosary beads by saying Rabbi Zidni Ayoma in your heart, so I may know you are listening. You must never fall asleep. When feel dizzy you must say louder these words. Afterward you will give me presents, and I shall be satisfied with your sadaka, gift." The next morning the boy felt better and energetic as he hunted great many fishes and a deer for food. He skinned the deer and saved the skin. That evening he was tired, fallow sleep, got up early morning. He sat on the rock next to his cabin and looked at the sunrises from the east. He wondered if his friend would speak again, and while thinking he started chipping some new arrows points. Suddenly as his train of thought changed, he heard the voice, "Give me some food, not water." Now the boy threw a few hunted birds and a fish into the trees. The story begins long into the night. One wonderful tale after another flowed from the trees. The boy fell asleep by listening to the story. The next morning the boy hunted far to the east and found a small village. No one knew him, but they liked his yarmulke, white hat. He soon found many friends. There were some hunters who offered to teach him how to hunt big game, and they went with him to his own camp on the cliff. At night he allowed them to listen to the stories that came from the trees, but he was the only one who could speak to the trees, and stories began when the boy was present at the cliff. Therefore, the boy had many friends with him to hunt and spent time gaining knowledge. He kept giving water and food to the trees to gain knowledge through stories. One day he made a new suit from the deerskin and desired to obtain decorated leather. Therefore he went to the village and found one house where a young girl lived with her parents who saw her suited for work. As soon as he knocked on the door, the girl spoke up and said, "Here is your leather strips to finish the suit. I have been waiting for you to come for them." The mother spoke, saying, "I now perceive that my future son-in-law has passed through the door and is here." The boy was surprised, thought he was dreaming, and punched himself. Thereafter the young lady brought bread and cup of water and asked, "My mother greatly desires that you should marry me." The boy looked at the girl and, very satisfied, ate the bread and drank water. The boy stayed at the house and married the girl. Perhaps a few villagers were jealous from his yarmulke, white hate, that represented knowledge, and because the young man married the most beautiful girl from that village, they acted in an evil manner towards the young man, and one night the bride said to her husband, "We must go away from here. The villagers will kill you because you have different religion and pigment." The young bride and groom arose on the cliff. Soon the trees spoke and said, "Life on Earth is a combination of physics and chemistry that produce biological organisms. You have a good heart and an important soul from your progeny to understand journey," the voice said. Soul is a ring of matter stuck in an oscillating electrical charge that keeps the senses alive, and the plates of rocks underneath your feet rotate slowly. Taken and excrete energy as the sun produces oscillating electric and makes magnetic fields of positive and negative electric charge around Earth to give and take matters. Day and night, men and women, good and bad, is based on dualism of physics, such as protons and electrons. The ring that is called soul, atoms, is made of 5 matters: negative electrons, neutrons, godly matter, sparks, and positive protons. The combination of heaven and the earth. Voice paused for a minute from the thunder and lightning. Spoke again and said, "The answer of your thought is hidden in gravity. It moves certain matters faster than the speed of light and responsible for making soul journeys along with the good and bad memories. Neutrons are connected to the sun fusion fields and particles of Almighty to the heavenly habitats. The sun is responsible for increasing and reducing pressure of gravity twice a day and works as a transformer. The earth gravity holds the clouds, trees upright, and oceans balance. Therefore, someone is responsible for this beautiful accident of creation through you, me, and others. Human beings are in the center of all creation to appreciate free will that blinks in the brain, heart, and body from oscillating electrical charge initiated before the creation of nature." The bride was not surprised and said, "The same sound told my parents about you should appear to get leather strips and marry your daughter to him." The young man was surprised thanks to the voice that came from trees for the beautiful story. All winter long the couple stayed in the cabin on the cliff and heard all the wonder tales of human history. The young boy's brain was full of stories with a lot of knowledge. As springtime came, the bride said, "We must now go east to your own people, and you should become a great man." Perhaps the boy was sad and said, "Well, in my own country I'm an outcast and called by many names." The bride laughed, saying, "Nevertheless, we should go east." They collected a few important items. The young couple seated themselves into the canoe and reached east. Together they walked to the village wearing nice clothing, looking handsome. People from the village came out to see the new couple. The boy told villagers that, "I'm the boy whom you once were accustomed to call an outcast, aborted child. Because of my beliefs, I have now returned again for human rights." COVID-19 and brutal death of George Floyd devastating American public, lawmakers, and government officials. According to my belief, anyone who holds the authority should be held to a higher standard, because at the end matter returns to the Almighty Lord.